Start with a question for you, which is just to take us through the origins of the project.
It was very simple. I was lucky enough to read the books, both the first diary that Colin Clark wrote called The Prince, the Showgirl and Me, and then 5 years later he subsequently wrote My Week with Marilyn, which was the hidden week during the making of The Prince and the Showgirl. And I can only describe it as falling in love. I just loved the material. I loved the unique insight he had into both the making of the film and, of course, into Marilyn herself. And to my amazement, as someone who's never made a film, I was able to get the rights to the books. And with a great screenwriter from the BBC called Adrian Hodges, we developed it. And BBC Films and the Weinstein Company were the dream partners as producers. And then, the big news, Michelle wanted to play Marilyn. So I've been very, very lucky all the way through.
Gentlemen, it is my special pleasure to introduce a woman who clearly needs no introduction. A very great actress on her first trip to London.
Marilyn, is it true you wear nothing in bed but perfume?
Oh. Darling, as I'm in England, let's say I sleep in nothing but Yardley's lavender.
Can you take us through a little bit your discovery of Marilyn, how you approached the character and who you sort of discovered Marilyn to be in the process?
Boy, let's see. Well, first, like you said, because the sort of previous representations of her were more of that ilk, it felt like maybe there was room. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the first thing that made me think, oh, maybe I can explore this. And Simon, and it was a decision made in the safety of my own home, and I didn't really consider sort of larger ramifications of it. And it was a very, very slow process. It all started at home. It all started with watching movies, listening to interviews, poring over books, and it started, it was just something that I put on in my living room, sort of try and mimic a walk or figure out how exactly it is that she's holding her mouth. The first sort of big discovery that I stumbled on was that Marilyn Monroe was a character that she played, and that the image that you're most familiar with, there was a person underneath there, and that was the first big discovery that was carefully honed, but it was artifice, and it was honed to where you couldn't tell that it was artifice. It felt so real, but it was something that she'd studied and perfected and crafted. So once I discovered that was a layer, and finding out what that layer was, and then getting underneath it. So it was a long and ungainly process.
Miss Monroe?
Marilyn is not ready.
Excuse my horrible face. Are you frightened of me, Colin?
No.
Good, because I like you.
Colin, is everything okay? Miss Monroe had some large packages she needed handled.
What is Marilyn doing with my third assistant?
Surprise!
Get back in! Colin!
I have something in my eye.
I can't see anything.
Be careful not to get in too deep.
Question for Eddie about whether the part brought back any memories of his own naive youth.
Yeah, did I relate? Yes, it did remind me a lot of my youth. There was one extraordinary moment where we were actually shooting at Eton College, and I was showing Marilyn Monroe. Colin was showing Marilyn Monroe around Eton College, and that was the school that I went to. And so we were doing this scene, and Harvey was there, and Michelle was there, and there were all these schoolboys were playing the parts, and my old head of drama was there, sort of stood up the side, going, "Oh, and this is like," and there was a sort of wonderful moment, you know, when we did that scene walking through, and all the guys were just, and Michelle sort of spontaneously improvised a kiss on one of them, and the guy just went beetroot, and they would sort of take me aside, sort of, what's she like? She's lovely. She looks. So it was there were wonderful moments. I mean, I think one of the great things with the whole production was the sense that we shot in the studio that The Prince and the Showgirl was shot in. Am I lying to say your dressing room? Yeah.
My dressing room was Marilyn's actual dressing room when she was making Prince and the Showgirl.
So there were all these elements.
And Parkside House was playing Parkside House. So when Marilyn is sitting on those stairs, having looked at the Miller's journal, Michelle sat on the very stairs that Marilyn would have sat at. And one of the great moments for me was when Michelle did that wonderful dance from The Prince and the Showgirl, and we were actually seeing that on the stage, the very spot that I think was in 1956 that Marilyn actually danced in that very spot, was incredibly moving and incredibly special.
All people ever see is Marilyn Monroe.
What must it be like to be the most famous woman on earth?
You could quit this. Forget Marilyn Monroe. Forget Hollywood. Let it all go.
Even if you are the most beautiful woman in the world, when you're 43 in Hollywood, you feel on the edge and past it, and the pain of that, and that, had Marilyn have lived, she may well have faced that sort of dilemma.
Shall I be her? Who? Marilyn.
Question about the difference in celebrity culture today versus in the 1950s. The film seems to some extent to comment on that, and could Michelle say what she feels the biggest difference is in celebrity culture today versus then?
The internet.